Okay. Next week is Hanukkah, and there will be a shiur as regular, but our in-house kolo will be also serving breakfast after the shiur, and I think what makes the most sense is we'll learn Rav Tzadok b'Inyanei Hanukkah, just to take a break, not from Rav Tzadok, but from the regular Tzidkas Hatzadik that we're learning through. I have a lot to say. There's a lot of information. I'm trying to figure out how to say respectfully that I'm not sure how everybody retains all this information without writing it down. Just I mean, I'm not a movie. That's the entertainment. It seems like there's a lot of information which you value because you come. So Rav Tzadok in Tzadik Bey, Samach Beis and Samach Gimel speaks about, and we started reading it last week, speaks about the legacy or the inheritance, if you will, of parents to their children, how it works through the Shvatim, and in Samach Gimel begins to speak about some things you get from your mother and some things you get from your father. Some things are, and he makes a distinction, which we'll go into, between tchunos and regilos. Let's call it, in our language, nature and nurture. There are certain things that are just the nature of the person, and some of the things are just the way they're brought up. So, in a big holistic way, for instance, he tells us that most daughters will take after their fathers, and hence take after is a funny word, but that's the word that we're going to use here. And hence, in Yiddish there's an expression, in the Meidim Zeppman dem Schwer. Do you ever hear that expression? So what it means is that often you will see that a woman will marry somebody like her father as opposed to somebody like her mother or mother's father or brother even. She'll marry somebody like her father. So if she marries well, because that's what you could say that's her model or that's her nature, however you want to understand it, we're going to explain it in depth, Bezras Hashem. And then there's certain things that the mother nurture, that Rav Tzadok tells us is the regilos Hetzlah, since a daughter, in our example, kind of hanging out with her mother, more in the kitchen and in life and the way of dressing, and so she's going to have a regilus of the mother. So it comes out that there's a regilus and there's a tchuna, and one comes from the father, one comes from the mother. This is all interesting, like from a social genealogy point of view, and I'm wondering as I'm learning this why Rav Tzadok is even worried about this, like who takes after the father, who takes after the mother, until you understand in a big global picture of Rav Tzadok that he's explaining the whole Klal Yisrael and the Shivtei Yeshurun and all the Nevi'ei Yisrael ad kedei the Mashiach of Klal Yisrael. Shi'avli b'mehera v'yameinu. He's not speaking about anything about like how to make a shidduch, although useful information. Or how to educate your kid. He's talking about something much deeper. And what I want to do is an introduction to this. I want to speak about two case studies which Rav Tzadok does in the Torah. And the first one is perhaps a smaller one, but very significant. I'll show you why it's significant. Is there did I left a medrash on the table? Oh, slicha, it's in front of my nose. Aharon HaKohen got married to, good. I love the Ramah here. It's a pasuk. Married Elisheva Bas Aminadav. The Gemara says that Aaron wanted to marry Elisheva Bas Aminadav because he liked her brother, who was Nachshon ben Aminadab. So I also want to marry somebody who's going to jump into the sea for my children, for Yiddishkeit, etc. So Aaron married Elisheva Bas Aminadab. The Gemara says from here, it's like a kind of a reverse reasoning, but the Gemara says that, and Rav Tzadok brings this in a little bit, that before you marry a woman, check her brother. Check her brother, because in the brother you will see a certain nature. In this case, it was the nature of Nachshon ben Aminadab, and that's who you're marrying, and you got to know if that's right. So you should always check the brother, and somehow the Gemara knew that Aaron did check the brother. Let's just work this through a little bit. Aaron and Elisheva gave birth to 4 children. Elazar v'Samar, Nadav Avihu. So those 4 children, became the Kohen. Let me read you the Medrash that I want to read you. Medrash says, Vayikach Aaron as Elisheva bas Aminadab. That's a pasuk at the beginning of Shmos. This Medrash Tanchuma is in Parsha Shmini. So the Medrash says, Einon u'moitzim ish v'isha sharasa smachais l'roiv. It's hard to find somebody who is so well positioned in Nachas as this Elisheva bas Aminadab. Ishtoi shel Aaron, shenamar v'yikach Aaron Elisheva bas Aminadab. Why? Sharasa, what was her Nachas? Okay, first of all, Sharasa Bala Kohen Gadol. She's the Rebbetzin Kohen Gadol. She was her husband was the Kohen Gadol. Mishamish Bekudna Gedoylo V'Navi. Moshe Rabbeinu Achi Bala, her brother-in-law, was Moshe Rabbeinu. We're talking serious here. Banel Skane Kahuna. They were Skane Kahuna, became Kohanim Gedolim. Ve'achia and her brother Nachshon, who was Rosh L'chol Nasiei Yisrael. See, but Nachshon was the Nasi of Yehuda, and as such, Yehuda was the Rosh Shivtei Yeshurun. As that's such that Nachshon ben Aminadab was the Rosh Shivtei Yeshurun, Prime Minister. So you had Moshe, Aaron, and Nachshon. So you can't have a woman who's with more nachas than this. Which I guess means it didn't last too long. Until Nadav Avihu went into the Mishkan and were makriv and eish zara. Oops, there goes the beautiful picture of Elisheva, who lost 2 sons in a minute at the time of the biggest simcha of Klal Yisrael. That's even postponed the Avelus. Vayidoim Aaron, like to us this happened. L'kach nemar lahoilulim al tahoilu. There's many psukim say, don't get carried away with your simcha. You never know. It's a little bit depressing, but you never know. I was thinking, and then I looked in this Tanchum, and my Tanchum at home, that, okay, Nadav Avihu were lost in the Eish Zara. Elazar v'Samar continued. And who was the son of Elazar? Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. So you with me on the family tree here? So it comes out that Pinchas, Asati like Brisi Shalom, he was a great man. So we have to talk about why I say this Tanchum. In this Tanchum it says, Nachshon Rosh L'chol Nasiei Yisrael. It says here, Medrash Rabbah Vayikra, Chishev Gamkein Pinchas ben Bina, that in her Nachas list was not just her brother-in-law Moshe and her brother Nasi Yisrael, but was also her grandson who was Mashuach Milchama. Her grandson was a hero. Pinchas was a hero, and so she was surrounded by everything except for Nadav Avi. So I just want to make 2 points here. First of all, Elisheva Bas Aminadav was from Shevet Yehuda. Nachshon ben Aminadav, Nasi Shevet Yehuda. Aaron was a Levi. Right? Aaron is a Levi, obviously. In this marriage, this was the time, maybe the only time or the first time, that Kahuna and Malchus came together. The Kahuna and everything that comes from the Kahuna, Yehuda Malchus, everything that comes from Malchus, all the way up to Mashiach ben David. To make it more fun, Eliyahu Navi was a Kohen, and he's the partner, if you will, of Mashiach ben David, who was from Yehuda. So that symbiotic relationship between Kahuna and Malchus happens. I'll just say somebody telling me just a 2-second break. Somebody was just telling me that he's supposed to be a Talmud Chacham, but he's kind of an eccentric guy, but he decided to make a chavrusa with AI. He was having a hard time finding a chavrusa. So his instructions to AI, he's a computer guy, but Talmud Chacham. So his instructions to AI was, you be Eliyahu Navi. And you'll teach me. So I'll ask you questions and you'll answer. Eliyahu Navi, answer. And the AI knew exactly what to do to every question that he asked. Every question, he told me a whole list of questions. And then he said, and when is Mashiach coming? And AI said, I can't tell you that. Okay. For those who understand or don't understand AI, it's done. Good story. You could try that at home. It occurred to me, like Eliyahu Navi is like particularly eccentric, but just would be interesting to be a chavrusa of Abaye for a minute. I wonder how it would work, or Rava, or something like that. But this was the first time that, as I say, that Eliyahu and David got together. Eliyahu was a kind. That you have the marriage of Kahuna and Malchus. Nachshon ben Aminadav was typical of Shevet Yehuda in the sense that Melech Paratz Gederhu, that we spoke about it last week, that anybody from Yehuda has to have the ability, the upcoming parshas are all about Vayigash Elav Yehuda, that Yehuda was able to break the barriers, Melech Paratz Gederhu, Yehuda Haida V'loi Baish. He didn't. The natural barrier of human consciousness he broke through. Etc., etc. A lot of things about Yehuda very, very different than Yosef. This all starts with Leah. Leah was Isha. The Gemara says, I'm not saying anything disparaging in this whole year about any of our avos and ibos. Love them all, but Leah Yatzon is Haisa. She was a Yatzanis. She was she was an outgoing. Let's call it outgoing. She was an outgoing person, and that also broke the barrier. And we're going to get back to that in a minute. But Nachshon ben Aminadav jumped into the sea because he was from Shevet Yehuda. This is what gave him the koach to jump into the sea. He was Paratz Geder. Didn't care about dying. He didn't care about. This is what has to be done, and you do it. This is what a melech is. This is true leadership in Klal Yisrael. That's what Mashiach is going to do. Nadav Avihu jumped into the Mishkan with an Eish Zara because they were from Yehuda. This did not come from the Levi side of them. This came from the Yehuda side of them. So Rav Tzadok says in Poiket HaKarim, this came from the Yehuda side of them, that they were able to break the barriers and say, why should this, what's wrong with Eish Zara? Let me do it my way. Why can't we? This is a breaking of the barriers, breaking of the rules, breaking of what was the norm then. No good. So here is Yehuda, Nachshon ben Aminadav. Why did they jump into because of Uncle Nachshon? That's why they jumped into the Mishkan with the Neish Zara. Elazar had a son, Pinchas. Pinchas broke the barriers. Why? Because he was Pinchas ben Elazar because of Uncle Nachshon. Because of Uncle Nachshon, he was able to break those barriers and put a little Levi and Cohen into the mix, and you get a very interesting mix as you'll think more about and we'll learn more about. But this was the story of Eishes Aaron. So when we say, the Gemara says like this kind of like shidduch advice, listen, before you marry somebody, you should really check out her brother. You're like, oh my gosh. The brother was responsible, not he was responsible, but the Mita was responsible for, it could come out very bad and it could come out very good, which is true of all of us. Whatever we are, it could come out very bad and it could come out very good. If you come out kind of like in between parv, that means you come out nothing. The idea is, in a perfect world, if we see somebody who's kind of like going the way that's different than what we would expect them to do, is just, I don't know how to do this, but if we would just know how to harness the energy and understand where that's coming from, instead of just calling it the Yetzer Hara, because everyone has a different Yetzer Hara, right? It's not so pashut just to call it Yetzer Hara, it's a catch-all term. If you just understand where it's coming from, there would be a possibility of taking what's commonly called off the derech into godless. I'm old enough to have seen how some of the so-called off the derech kids that I grew up with became the leaders of Klal Yisrael. I'm telling you. Certainly many of the biggest philanthropists, you ask them, what high school did you go to? They say, which week? even Rabbeim, even Rosh Yeshiva, telling you. But that's because some chacham along the line had or siyata d'shmaya nes, they had the koch to harness it. Anyways, that's case one. Elisha, Eishes Aaron. Interesting. Check out the brother. Another case which is perhaps even more interesting is Dinah. Dinah, of course, was Yaakov's daughter. And the Torah, Tzadok points out that the Torah makes a distinction between Dinah and the other Bnei Leah. The Torah says that Elah B'nai Leah, it names all the B'nai Leah, which is all the Shvatim, of course, Ve'es Dinah Bitai. So the Torah makes a distinction between Dinah and the other brothers, saying that Dinah Bitai, she was a shtickle Yaakov Avinu, this Dinah, as Dinah Bitai, father's daughter. Dinah Bitai, something we see, whereas the other Bnei Leah, meaning the Banim, the sons, were Leah. So here you see, Rav Tzadok points out, here you see where all the boys are like their mother, and the Dinah is like her father, Yaakov, as Dinah Bitai. So manyan. But let's take it. What? What?
She's referred to as Dinah Basleh when she goes out to Shem.
When she goes out to Shem. So, thank you. That's exactly where I'm going. Yes. Let's understand what happens. Dinah goes out to Shem. Dinah says the Gemara Yatzanis Haisa. That's like Leah. Yatzanis Yatza. She went out to see the Bnei Saris. They come to Nablus. Looking around, there was an Ir Abira. Checking it out, looking around, curiosity. Dinah, Bas Yaakov. and she's looking around. She meets, I think this is a little bit not yeshivish what I'm saying, but it's probably the emes, understandably why it's not the way we learned in a cheder. But essentially, Dinah has an affair with Shechem. She meets Shechem. It's not, I don't know, the way my Rebbe told me a cheder is that Shechem raped her and the brothers killed him. But lo kol kach pashut. Clearly in Chazal, the Gemara says a couple of times that not only wasn't it like that, but when Shimon came to kill Shechem, Dinah stood at the door and didn't let him in. So says the Gemara. So Dinah had a relationship, let's call, with Shechem. And let's just look inside here for a minute. With Shechem, in that relationship, they had a daughter, Osnas. We all know Osnas. Osnas, according to Chazal, I'll just read to you from the Rabbeinu Bechaya. This is in Parshas V'Ketz. Osnas bas Dinah haisa mishchem ben Chamar. She was a daughter of Shechem ben Chamar. So Osnas was a daughter of Shechem, but she was a daughter of Dinah. So Osnas, in other words, if she was a daughter of Dinah, she was a granddaughter of Yaakov Avinu. So just to get something that you may not have considered, that Yosef and Osnas were both grandchildren of Yaakov Avinu.
Son.
Yosef
was his son.
Was his niece. She was his niece.
Yosef was a son. I'm talking about Ephraim and Manasseh were grandchildren of Yaakov Avinu, but Osnas was right. In other words, he was Uncle Yosef. Osnas bas Dinah, Haisa Mishchem ben Chamor, Ulefi. This is all a quote from the Pirkei de Rebbe Lazar. Ulefi shegersha Yaakov mi beisai. Yaakov threw her out of the house. Who? Osnas. By Shiva b'toich sneh. Sounds familiar? Threw her into a bush.
That's pretty wild.
Kach nikras Osnas. Oh, everyone called her Osnas. It's wild to get thrown into a bush by your father, who's Yaakov Avinu, but then be named after it for the rest of it. Or she was the throwaway. She was thrown away. Osnas. Let's say Chazal. Kach nikras Osnas. But Yaakov thought ahead here. What did he do? Kasher laksav b'tzavara. He gave her some kind of a necklace. Because of and he wrote on the necklace, Kol hamidabek, bich midabek b'zarei shel Yaakov. You're going to go off into some nomadic existence, but she had this necklace that said, whoever's going to marry you, whoever's marrying me, is marrying Zarei Shel Yaakov. Yaakov Avinu, Chazal thought about this. Yosef should have saw, so Yosef marries her. Ra haksav ahu v'hitzniyai. The Chizkuni fills in the blanks over here. That in this fascinating story, and says. Bas Dinah, which is Osnas Mishchem Haisa, it's the same Chazal just quotes it. Ubiksha loharga b'nei Yaakov Avinu. And the brother said, let's kill Osnas. Ba Yaakov Avinu comes, that was Ba Yaakov Avinu, v'tala kamia b'tzavara. Yaakov Avinu comes and gives her this kamia. V'gersha mi beisai v'echbia atzma. And she hides herself bein hakotzim u bein habarkonim, and she hides herself from her brothers, from her uncles rather, in this bush. Sheesh. Al shem hasna nikras osnas. Ba Gavriel, comes Gavriel Malach, ve'avia leMitzrayim, brings her to Mitzrayim. Lifnei eshes Potifar v'gidalta. Gishmak, yeah. It's Gavriel. We got to get it in with Gavriel. This is what has to be.
He's directing traffic.
This is what has to be. Yeah. So So it ends up basically, now if you look deeper into the Midrashim, what actually happens is that she gets, again, just like Yosef was sold and thrown and basically sold down the river to Mitzrayim, so was this Osnas Bas Dina and Bas Shem. She was the product of this intermarriage, and she was thrown down the river, ended up in the house of Lifnei Eshes Potiphar B'Gidalta. And Eshes Potiphar brought her up. So she was Osnas Bas Potiphar, Eshes Potiphar, but she wasn't really. She was adopted as a throwaway from the Bnei Yaakov. Rashi comments just while I'm here that why sometimes is he called Potiphar and sometimes called Potiphera. So it was around this time, or a little bit earlier, that he was the Kohenon, like Yisro. I don't know how it works. He was the Kohenon. That was a big job, and suddenly became a Saris. And he became a Saris, so he lost the ayin in his name. It's in the words para. So he became a Saris, which Chazal explains. They're sounding like a soap opera over here, which is why the Eshes Potiphar was running after Yosef. Like an interesting, and of course Yosef resisted the Eshes Potiphar. It was famous. Because the Gemara asked the question. Says, "Ki kol amagadol yosem b'toich beisay nikra al shmai." From here, the Gemara I think learns that this is what happens when you're magadol yosem. Your last name should be Potiphera.
And that's even better. That the wife of Potiphera saw by explaining that she has to be with Yosef, and she didn't know it from her zera. For sure. From her zera, so it goes that far that even she sees it in Shamayim from her adopted daughter.
This theory, in my sefer, in my book Beginnings, this is what I wrote there, and exactly what you just said, and it was all about the two families merging. But here you have Osnas, who's a Jew. She's a Jew, and she's growing up in this Mitzrayim. Kishavar Yosef b'chol, so just fill in the blanks here. Kishavar Yosef b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, when Yosef came to Mitzrayim, Yatsu kol anoshim leroisei machmas yofio. Everybody knows that he was Mr. Egypt. So as Mr. Egypt, all the women were standing on the porches and throwing things at him, candies. I thought at the top of him and hug him. That's why we throw candies at a chassan. Just throw it. So because the women of Egypt were throwing candies and jewelry, right, on him. B'nois sada ale shur, kol achaz zoyrekas lechefet zoytachshet, to try to get his attention. So they're said to throw diamonds and things. V'zu loy hayala ma'al Israel. And this poor Osnas, so she was an orphan. She didn't have anything fancy to throw down. So then she remembered her necklace. Zarkala hakamiyah shebet savara. And so she throws down at Yosef her kamiyah that says, Bizarra Yaakov ano. V'nistako ba Yosef. Yosef looks at just imagine this situation here. Looks at the kamiyah, oh my gosh. One of these women is my niece. Has to be. Bizarre Shel Yaakov. Nistako ba Yosef, Yosef bas bito Shel Yaakov. Unasa loy leisha. The different Chazals is even more interesting. That where did Osnas come from? Osnas Paro made a shidduch when Yosef got out of jail. So Paro made a shidduch, and he says these two are very compatible. When you look at, I don't even know if he knew the Jewish part, but what he knew he was an Ivri. I don't know if he knew that Osnas was a Jew, but they were both Yisaimim, two Yisaimim that.
White. They were both white. All the mitzvahs were dark skinned, and Yosef and Osnas were fair skinned.
How do you know they weren't Teimanim or Sfardim? Okay. Listen, this whole Reb Tzadok is racist enough, so let's not take it any further. I guess. Okay, so yeah. So very good. So when Shimon came to kill Shechem, she said, "This is my husband." Everything I'm saying is a chazal. And he said, "I'll marry you." Which is, "I'll marry you, you'll have a husband." She didn't like that idea. She didn't buy into that idea. Not because she didn't want to marry her brother. It's a very interesting thing, because since you mentioned it, Kodemat and Torah, so you weren't allowed to marry two women from the same. In other words, Shimon was a ben Leah, and Dinah was a bas Leah, right? So how is he allowed to offer her in marriage? So the answer is the different Gemara that really Dinah was supposed to be the bas Rachel, and in fact was born to Rachel. Whereas when Leah was having all these children, Rachel said, "What's up with me?" And she became pregnant with Dinah, the Gemara says. And it was Leah that became pregnant with Yosef, and because of the tefillos of the imahos, that was nischalfa, and all of a sudden Yosef became Dinah, and Dinah became Yosef, which, by the way, is, I believe, one of the sources used in all the halachas of IVF as to who's the real mother and who's the not mother. Does it go with conception or does it go with birth? Okay, that's an interesting sugya unto itself. But this is the Pleiadic Chazal. But it comes out from here that if Shimon proposed to Dinah, that means that she was that's because Dinah was really Bas Rachel. And it was Achoisei Min Ha'em. Since it was Achoisei Min Ha'em, it would be mutter for him to marry her. She was the Yatzon. Oh, and here we get back to the Regilus and the nurture. There we get back to the nature and nurture question.
She was the Yatzon because that's a Zapa, and she really was a Zapa that switched. And Yosef was Misosel Besava, which is the Mida Benekeva, because it was switched.
You guys. Ten L'chachomim v'yechach emoid.
Is it also why Dinah was put in the box?
Let's get to the box. Dinah was put in the box, as I'll say it very sharply. Yaakov went to meet with Esav last week. He puts Dinah in a box because he doesn't want Esav to lay his eyes on her. Menenash, and his einish for that comes out. She goes and marries Shechem. So here's this young girl who you're insulating from the Russia, from Esav, and somehow or another, I leave all the pieces to you. Somehow or another, she ends up being a Yatzonis and moving on with Shechem and giving birth to this Osnas, which Yaakov threw away, and ended up marrying his son Yosef. Okay. Is it permitted to say that he didn't put her in a box because he was worried about Esav? He put her in a box because he was worried about Dinah. Meaning, she was a Yatzonis. She was. Why would Yaakov Avinu get an einish for this? Because this is not the way. Chazal tells us this is not the way. If somebody has a midah of Yatzonis, the idea is not to put them in a box. Okay, I said it.
Should we ask if Shimon was Yosef's father?
So Shimon was Yosef's. No, because it didn't happen with Yosef. Right?
He didn't marry Yosef.
Right. She rejected the marriage. But no, the question is only how could he even have a Hava Mina to marry her if it's Achosa Mina Av? The answer is Achosa Mina. The answer is Achosa Mina Av, but it wasn't Achosa Mina. Just stop telling you Alam Dusha Teretz. What?
I was also because if it happened, it would have been Shimon that threw us.
Yeah, that's correct.
There you go. Shem is Yosef's father. No, that's why Yosef ended up getting Shem.
He's buried there.
I'm sorry if I'm like completely yourself, but I still can't get over why would brothers have wanted to kill his daughter.
Well, I want to kill Yosef also.
Okay, but Yosef they had reason to hate him.
Yeah, what do you want from Dinah? It's worse. It was worse. I mean, what do you mean? She married. This was a bit of Yisrael for many years to sit Shiva and disown children from intermarriages.
Yeah, but that's Dinah, not what's that?
Daughter, Asnas. Yeah.
What did she do wrong? the baby.
Okay. I mean, with respect. I mean, what does a mamzer do wrong? What does okay, I get it. I don't want to get. I don't want to get. But what's interesting here, the real honesty. The answer is that the Shvatim are the shirish of all of our midos, but they obviously, if you read Parshas Vayechi, and even Moshe Rabbeinu's Parshas V'Zos HaBracha, and we all like to speak about Shiftei Ka, but there was some pretty, there was a lot of monkey business and funny stuff that was going on with the Shvatim. But at the end, these are our grandchildren. Let me just take it a step further. So Yosef and Osnas, I just want to picture this with you for a minute. So Yosef and Osnas have two children together in Mitzrayim, Ephraim and Menashe, the grandchildren I was talking about before. Ephraim and Menashe have Zedi Shechem, right? Dinah marries Shem, Bubby Dinah. And now Saba Yaakov appears on the scene, comes from Eretz Yisrael, comes into Mitzrayim, and wow, like be that guest grandfather here, who comes in and meets his new grandchildren, introduced to him by Yosef. Who are they? Mihaim. Asher Chana Noisi Elikim. These are my sons. So Shal's already worried. What's Yaakov going to do to that? So we all know what he did. In other words, these were his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Osnas was his granddaughter. Yosef was his son. Ephraim and Menashe were the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Yaakov Avinu. His mechudin is Shem. That's the makor of all that stuff. Mechudin stuff. His mechudin is Shem. Shem ben Chamor. And Yaakov, I feel like the parsha of the Torah is extremely moving. You know it by heart, but I just want to read it again, just in light of what's going on in this story over here. So Yosef comes with Menashe and Ephraim. Yosef's coming, not his sons. Yisrael, and Yaakov does almost everything he can to stand up for his son Yosef. Melech. Yeshiv al Amita. Rashi says, Nasan cholkin kavod lamalchus. Rashi says, give kavod for the Melech. Well, Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef el Shaddai nira elai beluz beretz Canaan vayivarech. I say, I have a bracha to share. Hashem gave me a bracha. Hashem appeared to me. I have a bracha to share. Vayomer elai, and he said to me, Hineni mafrecha v'yerbisicha and saticha l'gal amim. Listen to what he's saying to him. He's saying to him, I have a bracha to share. I have the bracha of Eretz Yisrael, yes? The bracha of Eretz Yisrael. And that's going to go to your children. You are the children. And now I want to say, you have two Egyptian children. And that happened all before I came to Mitzrayim, while I was in Eretz Yisrael. Lihain. These are my children. Ephraim Menashe, Keruvain v'Shimon Yil Li. Famous historic statement that this Ephraim Menashe, which were thrown under the bush by the Bnei Yaakov. They should not have even been, because it came from Osnas. Yosef, as far as Yaakov knew, should not have even been. He was misavel on him. He didn't know this whole story. That's clear. So all of a sudden he sees these two grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and what does he say? Ephraim and Menashe lihain. These are mine, and they are part of the bracha of Hashem of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore they're going to get nachla in Eretz Yisrael. Let me go on. It goes on to say, tells the story. Yaakov tells the story Yosef, and then he says, "Vayar Yisrael b'nei Yosef, vayomer mi'ele." Who are they? What do you mean? Who are they? He just gave a whole drasha that lihem. He says mi'ele. Vayomer Yosef el aviv bonayhem asher nosan li elihim bozeh. Vayomer kochem no'alai v'arhorchem. Who are they? Meaning they're talking about, he knew about his sons, but he didn't know the sons were there. Comes Chazal and they say they were standing outside the door. They were afraid of Yaakov Avinu. They were afraid of the whole story. And Osnas was abused. Their mother was abused by the uncles. Say it again? Ephraim. At this point, when it came to the brachas, they were afraid they were going to get cursed. Yaakov was not seeing clearly, but anyways, they were outside. He brought them closer. The coast was clear, if you will. He kisses them. He hugs them. I never thought I'd see you again. I certainly never thought I'd see these children, because this is history, Osnas. This was a blemish in the history of the life of Yaakov Avinu. And now we know Yosef takes both of them. Yaakov takes both of them. And now we know the famous thing that Menashe was the Bechor, and Ephraim was the second one, and Yaakov switches his hands around, unnatural to what should be going on over here, and he gives the main bracha, he wants to give the main bracha to Ephraim, and not to Menashe. Ephraim v'loy Menashe. Yosef Hatzadik does not like this, that he's skipping over Menashe for Ephraim. And Chazal explained why he didn't like it. He says, Menashe is the Bechor, but not only is the Bechor, he's my aide. He works in the palace. He's the Mishnah Lamelech. He's the Gadol. Menashe is the Gadol. Ephraim is sitting and learning, like you said, with Yaakov. He sits and learns. But Menashe was the one who was the future of Klal Yisrael, from what he understood. He was the dignified one, dignitary one. And Yaakov tells him, Yadati b'ni yadati. And this one I just want to analyze for 1 minute. Yadati b'ni yadati. Yosef, back off. Yadati b'ni yadati, says Chazal. Yadati ma shahaya v'yadati ma sheyeh. Yadati ma sheyeh. I know what was. I know what's going to be. I know what's going on. I know what I'm doing over here. And even though I know, he says in the pasuk, that Menashe is the Bechor, I'm giving the bracha to Ephraim. So Ephraim gets the main birchas ha'aretz. Look at this. The birchas ha'aretz, not any bracha, not a bracha of, you'll be rich, you'll be matzliach, you'll have longevity. No, he gives them birchas ha'aretz. The whole arichos of the story is that Yaakov Avinu said, I received the bracha to L'zaracha. I don't know if we get it enough. I received the bracha that L'zaracha et teines ha'aretz hazais. And now I'm in Egypt. And which Zaracha? And Ruvain, Ephraim Menashe, Ruvain B'Shimon, Yili. They're going to get a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, which of course they did get a chelik in Eretz Yisrael. And this is the very, very, the moving story of the bracha. Ad kedei kach, that when we give our children a bracha, we say, Simcha Lakim K'Ephraim K'Menashe. But this is not the end of the story. This is mamish the beginning of the story. Because fast forward generations into Sefer Malachim, and if you were here on Tisha B'Av, I was Meirich on this, or else just read your Bible. Ephraim and Menashe became part of the northern kingdom, fighting Malchei Yehuda, killing the Jews of Yehuda, the same Ephraim. Har Ephraim was the headquarters of Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Damim, V'yeshoimrim Gilui Arayis. Ephraim and Menashe, the same ones that got the bracha from Yaakov Avinu, were the leaders, the cause and the leaders of the 10 lost tribes. They were Gola from Eretz Yisrael. for all of their averas. All of the kings of Israel during that whole tkufa said that this is the most terrible thing that can be. And Golus, they were lost. They were lost. And then there was Kilu, two parts of Golus. Part one of Golus was Ephraim Menashe, who led Golus out of Eretz Yisrael and got lost. And the second Golus was the Golus Bayis Rishon of Yehuda and Binyamin, as it was. But here you have Yehuda Binyamin, was Ben Rachel, and Ephraim Menashe was the Bnei Yosef and Osnas and Shechem, and they came out really, really bad, and we don't even know who they are. Now, if you look, it occurred to me the following. If you look at Yirmiyahu is a sefer of Teichach, warning the Klal Yisrael at the time about the imminent galus if you guys don't get your act together. And he talked about the Kila Araya Shvichas Damim and Avodah Zarah. He talked about the machlokes that's going on. He talked about all the different things that it's actually like difficult to read Divrei Hayomim and Sefer Malachim and to understand what Jews were doing to Jews. And Yirmiyahu understood it, and he decried it, and he went around from place to place and city to city, giving toichacha and giving musar and giving warning, and got involved with the Melech Mitzrayim and the Melech Bavel, and got involved in that machlokes. Yirmiyahu was b'mesiras nefesh. They tried to kill him, right? He was b'mesiras nefesh talking about this. And then at the end, Perek Lamed Aleph and on in Yirmiyahu, he gives nechama. And like, this is going to happen. And he talked about the Golus Hashvatim. Ephraim Menashe talked about how terrible that it was. And then comes Perek Lamed Aleph, which is Nechama. I think we without looking at the entire context, Perek Lamed Aleph became like a songbook. Koyamar Hashem, Yirmiyahu said, Kol barama nishma, Nehi b'chi samrurim. I hear, Yirmiyahu says, Koyamar Hashem, I hear in the heavens a cry. Kol barama nishma, Nehi b'chi samrurim, very bitter. Rachel was Yosef's mother, Mevako al boneha. Me'ana lihinachem al boneha ki einenu. Rachel's crying over her children. One thing. Me'ana lihinachem. Second thing, she will not take any nechama for the loss of her children al boneha ki einenu, because they are no more. I just point out something here. Says the Malbim. Titzayer. A beautiful Malbim. Imagine this. Ki Rachel aim habanim soyekes b'kol al shnei bonah shegolu behem b'nei Yosef u'b'nei Binyamin. There's a golus. Rachel's crying on the golus. That's how we all think when we sing the song, right? Rachel, Rachel. V'hinei b'nei Binyamin shegolu im Yehuda l'bavel asidim lachzer b'mei koresh. The truth of the matter is a terrible golus, but the truth of the matter is 70-year golus. And then those Jews of Yehuda, Ben Yosef, they came back to Eretz Yisrael and they rebuilt the second Beis HaMikdash. So Rachel is crying about that. Rachel mavak al bonah. Says the Malbim, what's the me'ano lehinachem? Why is she impossible to comfort? They come back after 70 years. Says the Malbim, sha'agam shetekabel tabchumim al b'nei Binyamin b'shuvam b'vayah sheni. But she's never going to see again the Ephraim and Menashe that went out into Golus. Meaning, yes, okay, 2 Shvatim are coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and that I'm crying about, but me'ano le'nachel al-benah, 2 dinim, says the Malbim, but the second part of what's going on over here, which is the first Golus of the Aseres HaShvatim, which today we like to call the 10 lost tribes, they are gone. Ki ineno And on this, you can't comfort me and tell me that in 70 years there's going to be a Megillas Esther and there's going to be what's happened to the Talmud not with us even till today. So this is what Rachel. What does Hashem say? Koyamar Hashem. Koyamar Hashem. Mini koyle mi bechi. Stop crying. Be'inayich midima ki yesh sacher lefulasechnu Hashem v'shavu me'eretz oyev. It's not true, Rachel. They will come back. They will come back. V'yesh tikva la'achrisechnu Hashem v'shavu vanim legvulam. So when we were singing v'shavu vanim legvulam, which vanim? Ephraim and Asher. Shavu vanim. I think we have to reconsider whether we should be singing this for every Ola that comes here. But,
How do you see it? That's not talking about the younger.
also, they will all come back. They all come back. Shavu vanim legvulam. But listen to the Navi. Listen to the Navi, Eric. Shamaya Shamati Ephraim misnoided Yisartani ve'ivasar ke'egel lo'luman. I know that Ephraim. That's I'm talking. I know that Ephraim is running around like a wild sheep, goat. Hashiveni v'ashuva ki ata Hashem Elikai ki achrei shuvi nichamti v'achrei hivadi sofakti al yorech. Because after all of Golus is going to go through sofakti al yorech, son of a gun. They're back. How'd they get back? Next pasuk Yotes. Havein Yakir Ephraim made it through all of our tefillos on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It makes us. What is Havein Yakir Ephraim talking about? Hashem says Ephraim was Oived Avodah Zarah. Menashe Oivdei Avodah Zarah hayu. Shvichas damim hayu, but I love them. Habein Yakir li Ephraim ki yelad shashuyim ki midai dabri bam zacharas kerenu oid al kein hamu me'ai loy rachim arachamenu nu Hashem. What a lesson. But first, a perspective. This pasuk Habein Yakir li Ephraim explains all the brachas. The bracha Hashem gave to Yaakov, there's bracha Hashem that Yaakov gave to Ephraim and Menashe. And if you look at it, why do you give a bracha to Ephraim? Rashi says he gave the bracha to Ephraim first because Yoshua bin Nun came from Ephraim. If Yoshua bin Nun came from Ephraim, what about Yoshua bin Nun? We don't. Rashi says, and what about Yoshua bin Nun? We don't have to ask that question. Yoshua bin Nun, he conquered Eretz Yisrael. Even about Yoshua bin Nun, he stopped the sun. He stopped the sun. You know what it says in the Zohar HaKadosh? It says that when Yaakov Avinu was wrestling with the Sarei Shalais of the Malach said, "Let me know Kehillas Shemesh." He's talking about Yoshua bin Nun. You're talking about somebody could stop the sun. Who stopped the sun? Ephraim. Yoshua ben Ephraim. This was the schus. And this is what if we have that type of control over all of nature, all of Teva, the one thing that nobody's stopping is the sun. Baruch Echamo. Baruch Hashemesh b'tzarayim. Who's stopping the sun? But let me go because the sun has stopped. The sun also did funny things when Yaakov Avinu had his dream by the ladder, right? It made him go to sleep faster. The Shemesh went down. But what the point is that it's time for me to end. That's the point. But the thing of it is that Yaakov Avinu Yadati B'ni Yadati, and the Yadati B'ni Yadati is I understand, and I'm telling you that Ephraim is going to have a Yehoshua. All this comes from Osnas. All this comes from Dina. Yatzonis Haisa comes from Leah. Yatzonis Haisa. This is a tchuna of Yatzonis, and it's this. Yehuda was a Yatzu Paratz Gadar in one way. Finished talking about Elisheva Shazarin, which is just as fascinating. But what's important about this is here, Yirmiyahu is talking about today. That's the important part about this. The important part about it is that when we bless our children and we say, Simcha Lakim Ephraim Kimnash, that's Ephraim. That's the Oivdei Avodah Zarah that headed the 10 lost tribes, and who knows how we're ever going to find them? So the answer is, who knows how we're ever going to find them? It's Hashem. Hashem knows how to find people, and maybe they're Gerim, maybe they come back as Gerim. I don't know. I don't have that information how they end up coming back, but I don't put anything past God. But the bracha that we're giving our children is even that the Jewish people go through. In my closing statement today, Jewish people go through such adversity, such suffering. And Yaakov Avinu understood, Asnas being abused and thrown under a bush, giving birth to the stopping of the sun and the kibush of Eretz Yisrael. It's all of this adversity, and that this is whenever there's suffering, the suffering opens us up to new horizons. Nobody, as I always say on Shabbos, nobody ever became a great person while they were on vacation in Honolulu. It's the struggles that open us up to new horizons, and it's not a shoo-in with the Bnei Yaakov. So they're all, why did they do this? Why did that? We don't have to excuse it. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe it was wrong. I mean, I think we have to grow up and stop excusing everything. But it was the struggle, literally, of abuse, and literally of two Yisayimim, Yosef, two Yisayimim, Yosef and Asnas, two grandchildren of Bizarre Shel Yaakov, that end up coming back, winning Eretz Yisrael, taking the Berachos Haaretz, and eventually, you look in Yirmiyahu, bringing the Geula.
The what? God was the wrong thing. What is he doing there?
So sometimes something is, what's he doing with what?
I'm saying that
sometimes something is the wrong thing right now, but that doesn't mean that Hashem doesn't know what it's doing and that there's a bigger picture here. So this is Yadati, B'nai Yadati. One of the most difficult concepts that Reb Tzadok repeats over and over again is how Aver is also min hashamayim, which gives us no license to do an Aver, because our job is to follow the rules. But Melech Paretz Gader, the rules were not all followed. I once heard from my Rebbe following. He says, "Why didn't the Avos keep the Torah before Matan Torah?" Okay, so what's the simple answer? There was no Matan Torah. Why does he keep the Torah before Matan Torah? He said that if there was Matan Torah, all of the families of Israel could never have been formed. So Jewish history wouldn't have happened if there was a Matan Torah. Hashem chose the time with the Shvatim to do the Matan Torah.